Namaste. I'm Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell from the Unity Center in beautiful San Diego, California. Each week, we provide spiritual leadership to our growing community, as well as bringing positive change into people's lives. If this message speaks to your heart, please consider helping to support our dedication by making a one-time or recurring donation now. I love the idea of learning, and I think that maybe that's one of many reasons actually, but certainly one reason I really enjoy unity. I enjoy the teachings of metaphysics, the teachings of a very practical approach spiritually to life. And within unity, there's so much room to stretch and to grow and to keep one's mind open. I love the idea of learning. I love the idea of growing. I remember when my kids were still attending college, and the few times we would go up to visit them and walk the campus, that I just feel this sense of aliveness that comes from being immersed in a place that's dedicated to intellectual understanding, to knowledge, and ideally to the application of that, right? And so there's all different levels academically to learning and growing. And as a society, we benefit greatly from those who make a decision and a commitment to deeply pursue their education in a very specific area, to get their master's or to get their PhD in that specific area. And society benefits from that deep exploration and that increased knowledge and skill that comes from that kind of growth and exploration. But imagine what it would be like if the benefits that would accrue to the human family if we were to have a society of those who have graduated with the master's degree in spirituality. Wouldn't that be just qualitatively a different kind of society, a different kind of world? If we, alongside valuing the many things that we do value in life, if collectively we really valued and we really encouraged one another to pursue getting better and better in our spiritual understanding, and to make that understanding the very core of the way that we live our lives. Not only would we benefit individually, clearly we would. Clearly our individual lives would be transformed, but everything rippling out and from us would be touched by that. The people that we know, the relationships that we have, the businesses that we enter into, the work that we do in the world, the communities that we live in, the country that we live in, would all benefit. I think this is why in the Bible we're told to seek God with all our mind, with all our heart, with all our soul. And to me, that doesn't mean religion. It means a spiritual connection, a deep and abiding spiritual connection that then becomes the lens through which we look at our life experiences, our life challenges, our life opportunities, a lens through which we approach everything and everyone. So imagine enrolling in such a course of spiritual growth and spiritual mastery. What would be required of us? Well, when I think of enrolling in something, I realize that there's a process to it, right? It's more than just showing up. It's showing up with a certain degree of earnestness, with a commitment. It's a making time to be there. It's the commitment to whatever the course involves, to study, to read, to expect, to challenge one's thinking, to pay attention to the professor, right? And to apply what it is that we're learning. Last week, I talked to you about the evolution of consciousness, that in our spiritual teachings, in our spiritual practice, we try to identify some benchmarks, some typical ways of showing up in the world, typical frames of reference consciousness-wise. And we identify at least 4 of them. The why me stage, the by me stage, the through me stage, and the as me stage. The why me, where we feel like life is just kind of happening to us and we can't really figure out why, especially the bad stuff, the stuff we don't want. We just can't figure out why it keeps happening, and we can easily fall into this feeling of being a victim or of just being in the wrong place at the wrong time all the time. Or the by me, where we suddenly begin to wake up, and it's usually because things have gotten so bad in the why me state that something happens, the cosmic 2x4. You've been introduced to that, I'm sure most of us have. That wakes us up, and we start to engage in life, and we start to learn things. We start to learn how to use our minds, and we begin to use them very deliberately to create more of what we want to experience in our lives. We think, we plan, we visualize, we affirm, we treasure map, we do spiritual mind treatment, we do affirmative prayer. We're creative. We're manifestors. And then there's the realization that can be heavy, that can be very tiresome, and that maybe there's a better way, or maybe there's more to the way than just that. And that's the through me stage of consciousness, right? Where we open up and realize that, we have this great mind, but this great mind is part of the one mind, and that we can begin to cooperate and consciously co-create. And so through me, there's the energeticness of that. And then the as me, where there's really no line, if you will. There's no sense of separation. And so we move along this path, this growth, as we give up certain things along the way. These are not hard and fast, black and white stages. They do flow, and we do flow in and out of them. But as students of a master's program in spirituality, we understand what those markers are, and we catch ourselves because we're paying attention. We're paying attention to where we are in how we deal with the challenges in our lives, where we are with our understanding of God, where we are with the way we walk on the planet. That was the CGE test that we took last week, right? When I said, how do you show up in your life? When challenges hit, when change happens, how do you show up? Are you in the victim, why me state? Are you trying to do it all on your own? The by me, I will get through this. Or are you opening up? Whether it's dealing with a challenge or a change, or dealing with an opportunity, opening up to a greater flow, to through me. So as we were looking at those last week, as we were looking at how do we interact with change and challenge, where are we in our relationship with God? Do we only turn to God when everything is falling apart and we've done everything else and nothing else is working? We go, I better go pray now. I mean, how many times have we heard doctors say to a family, I've done everything I can do. It's time to pray. I think it's time to pray first, not last. First, not last. Prayer shouldn't just be like a life preserver that we throw in when we're drowning. I mean, I'm glad we can throw it in then. But we need to have the practices that we rely on so we can swim through life better, right? And so those 4 stages of consciousness, we move through them, we grow through them as we begin to give up some things. To move from the by me state, or to move from the why me state to the by me state, we have to give up blame. Think about that. To move from the state of where life is just happening to us and we can't figure out why, We have to move away from blame. And as soon as we move away from blame, we begin to take responsibility or accountability. We move from the by me to the through me state with another kind of surrender. The surrender that it's all and only up to me, and I got to control it all. I got to do it all. We can't move into the through me state if we're holding on so tight and not giving Spirit, God, the divine flow, the Tao, whatever you want to call that, movement and space to operate through our minds, through our hearts, through our very hands. And to the extent that we're able to surrender in that way, eventually we taste that experience of consciousness where there is no separation between us and the One. There is no separation between us and the divine. So how do we build more of that into our lives? I think one of the ways that we do that is with a real commitment to cultivating conscious connection. To cultivating conscious connection. Say that with me. Cultivating conscious connection. Cultivating conscious connection. The Apostle Paul talked about, or put it in these words, to pray without ceasing. Some of us grew up in a religious tradition that had us praying on our knees. Others of us grew up in traditions with the rosary or with certain rote prayers that we said. Others grew up with other kinds of prayers that were said at specific times in specific ways. But that's not what I think Paul or any mystic has ever meant when they talked about this idea of praying without ceasing. It's not realistic to sit on your knees all day long, right? We got stuff to do. Anybody have stuff to do? We have stuff to do, right? So what does it mean then? If someone like the Apostle Paul talked about pray without ceasing, or pray without ceasing, or Brother Lawrence called it, and I like this even better, practicing the presence. Say that with me. Practicing the presence. Practicing the presence. I think about the formal times that I have in my day to practice the presence. I call it meditation or I call it prayer. And for me, that formal time is usually in the morning. And I have a place I typically sit. Sometimes I burn incense, not all the time. Sometimes I begin with the reading of the daily word. Sometimes I begin with the reading of just for today. And sometimes I don't have any readings and nothing other than just sitting in the presence, practicing in a very specific time and mindful way. I'm not doing anything else. But there's another way to also pray, another way to also have that conscious connection. And I think that we cultivate that by catching ourselves at various moments throughout the day, and just in an instant, tap into the awareness that there is something more than us. Does this make sense what I'm saying? Like if I say to you right now, don't listen to me, and maybe you're not, but don't listen to me, but pay attention right now. Can you, in this split second, just touch that presence of whatever you sense to be Spirit or God? It's to do that, to build a habit, to cultivate that practice more frequently. It doesn't have to be only when we're sitting in our meditation time or meditation chair. I know you know this. I know what a smart community I get to be involved in. And I know that you read and I know that you learn not just spiritually. I know you know about the plasticity of the mind. I know you know about some of the things that are being studied and researched about the neurology of the brain and the firing of the synapses and how repetitive thought can now be traced to building stronger neural pathways physically in the brain. To me, that's really exciting. It's not new, but it's exciting that it can be measured. It's exciting that it's being explored by those that maybe we wouldn't say are on a spiritual quest. It's exciting because it underscores, it affirms what many of us in spiritual teaching and practice have always known, that we can cultivate a different consciousness through practice. And so cultivating this conscious connection in addition to that more formal time that we pray and pay attention, to cultivate it in moments throughout the day, to just go, oh, wait a minute, I'm gonna tune in right now. It begins, I think, to help rewire our brain. And why would that be important? Because when we get hit with bad news, when something really tough does happen, when we don't know how to handle it with the best of the thinking that we've used up to this point, we've got something else that kicks in, that jumpstarts our faith, that puts us on the right and better trajectory for finding an answer or healing or a solution. So cultivating this conscious connection is about tuning in and listening as well to that still small voice. So it's cultivating and connecting with that presence. It's also paying attention to it. It's also paying attention to it. Whenever I talk to people about tuning into and listening to and for guidance, invariably I'm asked, well, how do you know if it's guidance or all the other chatter going on in your mind? And my answer is this: listen, follow, and observe. Or, here's the other way: listen, don't follow, and observe. You will quickly learn. As human beings, we are so hardwired to learn, most of us are, to learn from our mistakes. To listen, follow, learn, or listen, don't follow, and learn. Listen, follow, learn. Listen, follow, observe. Pay attention. When that still small voice is nudging at you, go this way, go that way, not this way, not that way. Step back, stop, reevaluate. Don't, as I've said before, don't send it to voicemail. Pick it up, and pay attention. We have a great story in the Bible, in the Old Testament, of this conscious connection with God. And what happens when we listen, don't follow, and observe is the story of Jonah. Jonah was being given guidance, told by God, the story goes, that he was to go to Nineveh because there was some bad stuff going on in Nineveh. And so he was to go to Nineveh. He got clear instructions. Do you remember what he did? He got in a boat and went exactly the opposite direction. I like Jonah because I've done that. Have you ever done that? There's something that's telling you do this or don't do that, and you don't pay attention. Not only do you not pay attention, you go in exactly the opposite direction. And Jonah went in exactly the opposite direction. God gave him plan A, go to Nineveh. He didn't do it. Plan B. Do you know what happened to Jonah on the boat when he went the opposite direction of Nineveh? Well, there's a long part of the story. I'm going to give you the real short part of the story. And that was because he was bad luck on this boat, so to speak, that there was a storm that came up, and lots were cast to see who was the cause of this bad weather on the boat, and they determined it was Jonah. And so he got thrown overboard. Do you remember next what happened? I'm so glad you said whale. Do you know that's not in the Bible? Maybe in a paraphrase, but in accurate translations, it's not a whale. It just is a big fish. We assume, because we're taking the story purely literally, that it would have had to have been a whale. Just like there's not an apple in the Garden of Eden. That's another story we'll talk about another time, or come to my Bible classes when I do them. Whole other topic. But anyway, so he's swallowed by this whale, and then eventually the whale's not too happy. Not whale, Wendy. He's swallowed by a big fish. The big fish isn't too happy, and it throws him up, and guess where he lands? Nineveh. There's so much in that story, right? Can you relate? I can relate so clearly. There are times that it's like, okay, I'm maintaining a conscious connection with God, with Spirit. I'm really doing my best out of my human nature, and I get guidance to do this or not do that. And it's like, are you serious? Are you serious, God? I want to get in the boat and go the opposite direction. I don't want to go to Nineveh. I want to go somewhere else. We are always being guided. We really are. We're not always paying attention. And sometimes we're paying attention and we don't like what we hear. And the practice, I think, is always to be gentle with ourselves and to be as mindful as we possibly can. And we do that by cultivating a conscious connection, by practicing having those moments where we remember, okay, there's more to my life than what's going on right now. There's more than just me. There's more than just my body. There's more than just my mind. There's more than just my past. There's more than just my story. Let me stop for just a moment and be with that and touch that. It has a way of clearing out the cobwebs. It has a way of helping to build faith in us. It has a way of helping us begin to see more clearly. Enrolling in the Master's Program. We don't have to go anywhere else. Right where you are, your life is a perfect setup for your spiritual evolution and growth. My life is a perfect setup for my spiritual evolution and growth. It does not mean I like everything in my life right now. It doesn't mean you like everything in your life right now. You may not. But the spiritual teaching, the truth as we understand it in metaphysics, is our lives are perfectly set up for us, for what our soul is needing and ready and wanting to learn and experience right now. And if we can really accept that, if we can accept that very large frame around the life we are living now, we will find that no matter what is in that frame, that we're better equipped to handle it because we realize its purpose. And its purpose is to grow us. To grow us into what? Into the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. To grow us into the lighted Christ consciousness, God consciousness, Buddha consciousness, beings that each of us is meant to be. This idea of the Master's path, this idea of the Master's journey is not meant just for a Jesus, a Buddha. It really is meant, I believe, and I believe they taught this, that it's meant for us as well. And so it's a very individual, very personal journey, but it's a journey that warrants our commitment, and the result of that journey will be a tremendously improved experience of our life. Namaste.